All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I hope everyone's doing well. There's going to be a slight change to the schedule this week. There seems to be an awful lot of interest in the disc training. I think it's important to know who you are and who you're dealing with. I'm going to have to chat to the owners. I don't want to screw up anyone's schedule, but we've got it lined up tomorrow, starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, so a little bit earlier, and going until noon, because it's a thorough training and it takes that long. And so if we're going to bother to do it, we're going to do it right. So Jenna Haas is a certified disc trainer. My buddy Adam Dorfman hooked me up. So I'll send the email out, obviously, but I will chat to the owners, maybe chat to your owners. Again, I don't want to screw up anybody else's calls, but lots of interest there. So start tomorrow at 10:30 and go until noon. Also, last chance to send in questions for Steve Phillips, who's going to chat to us on Friday. The way his brain works, he doesn't want to answer questions on the fly. He wants to read them, think about them, and he thinks he'll do a better job answering them if we send them to him. So this morning is the kind of the deadline to send in any questions for Steve. All right, let's get going. My buddy Sebastian Angus is joining us today from somewhere in California. Where are you, buddy?
Deep in quarantine in a bunker somewhere.
No, where are you? You're down south a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm in South Orange County in Laguna, and then technically in Laguna Hills, so right behind Laguna Beach. Alicia's feeling me. She knows where it's at.
Nice. A lot of people know you. My dad's on. He doesn't. So you want to start off with just a 2-minute bio, where you're from, what's been going on?
Sure. So I got into business in 2010, so right after the last recession, and maybe I'll get into that as we get into discussion today, the significance of that for me and how I came in and why I'm so excited about this particular recession, the pandemic notwithstanding. But I started in Rancho Cucamonga, which is an hour east of here. So I drove 71 miles. And if you're like, where the hell, Rancho Cucamonga? That's how I felt when I got the call. Like, where the hell is Rancho Cucamonga? And then I figured out it was 1 hour closer to Vegas. That was it. That's all I knew about it. I was like, all right, it's on your way to Vegas. And so I started on AT&T Uverse, which I know a lot of you, that's close to a lot of your guys' hearts. Your org is a big part of AT&T Uverse. And so I did a res campaign. I've been on retail the last 6 years. My brother started the business with me, which is pretty cool. So he's still in it. He's an owner, Joel Ingus, and he's in Rancho Cucamonga, as it turns out, and we're all doing retail together. I got promoted to OC in 2016. Took me about 4.5-ish years to get there from ownership. Again, fucking pandemic notwithstanding, was on pace to hit senior national by whatever the next conference is. However, that seems highly unlikely at this time. So we'll take it one day at a time and figure out what we do next.
Yeah, but one of the reasons I wanted to get Sebastian on, he's one of my favorite people. We tend to drift off at these conferences or fantasy football drafts and go shoot the breeze. But I think he just has a very unique, dynamic, I would say refreshing perspective on the business. I think he definitely has kind of a go big or go home mentality. How big's your office space and how many people work at?
8,400.
8,400 square feet?
Yep.
And then how many recruiters do you have in your office?
Well, before the shenanigans, we had 14.
So,
but that was supporting our entire org, obviously, not just her.
Sure, no, but that just gives you an indication that he thinks a little differently. So he had all 14 recruiters in his office, I'm assuming, and I haven't been there yet, but in a separate room where they were just pop, pop, pop for all of his offices.
It looks a bit like a call center, which is what I was not trying to do. I don't necessarily like that look, but that's what it looks like, yeah.
But anyway, so that gives you an idea. He's a big thinker and got some big goals. So I asked Sebastian and I've done this with all the speakers. So I think if you lean on your strengths, that's an effective way to really maximize your potential. Sebastian told me that his strengths, in his opinion, are his mentality, his self-awareness, and his just general perspective on things. So that's kind of the topic today. And, we can do some questions at the end if we have some time. We'll stick them in the chat closer to the end of Sebastian's spiel. Over to you there, Sebs.
Beautiful. And just so I know, and keep me honest here, how much time do I have?
So you got a good 35, 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And then, so everyone has to be off the call at probably 8:58 Pacific so that they have time to get on the next one.
Beauty. Okay, cool. Well, you cut me off if you're going. First of all, I appreciate being invited on the call, Ed. Thank you. And hopefully in the next 40 minutes or so, I'll be able to add some value to you guys as we go through an unprecedented time. But my focus in general has been on psychology. I think 80% of success is psychology, 20% is skills. And so I certainly could talk about skills. I could talk about how to get tactical in our business, but I have a feeling that you're getting quite a bit of that and should be getting fed pretty well there. And so I want to unpack what I'm working on, and then hopefully we'll have some questions at the end. But my big goal for this year, coming into 2020, was on personal development and self-awareness. So my thought process was, what is the one thing that if we do really well as an org solves for the most other things? And that's a planning procedure where you're thinking so you're not spreading your focus into too many things. What's the one thing you can do if you really double down on this solves for the most other things? And so it became very apparent to me very quickly, the greatest gift that we can give ourselves, the greatest gift we can give others, the greatest gift we can give our community is our own personal self-awareness. Now, before this sounds too woo-woo with you guys, just stay with me and I'll explain what this means and why it's important. But the World Economic Forum did a big report last year, and they were studying lasting success. So they were looking at people that had succeeded through many recessions, succeeded through many ups and downs, and seemed to continually stay relevant. And one of the obvious examples of that, there's many, but one of them is Sir Richard Branson, right? The guy's been a model of an entrepreneur and innovated and re-innovated for the last at least 30, 40 years. Is incredible, right?
And I would say Richard Branson and Snoop Dogg.
As another example, who incidentally has a house in Rancho Cucamonga. Neither here nor there. So when I looked at it, I was like, all right, this is interesting. So their report, this may be worth writing down, they found 4 characteristics that were inherent with every one of these groups, 4 of them. That, hey, all of these guys, now we're not talking about flashes in the pans, we're not talking about shooting stars, guys that had one big hit and they were out. We're talking about guys with lasting power. If you haven't figured out our business yet, our business is all about lasting power, right? It's a marathon, it's about endurance and really building a meaningful influence and being able to expand your influence and then develop real wealth comes from having lasting power. For most of us, success isn't going to come from hitting one out of the park. And that's real hard coming into our business because it's not what our culture teaches us. It's sure the hell not what school taught us. And here we are in an environment where we got to learn how to sustain success. Okay. So the 4 characteristics of sustainable success. These are guys who are doing it decade in, decade out. Number one on their list is the World Economic Forum. You can look up this report on your own if you want. The number 1 trait of these guys was self-awareness. The number 1 trait, self-awareness, the ability to stop and observe oneself, to begin to understand where your holes are, why you think the way you think, and then to be able to change them. And we're going to get into tools you can use to become more self-aware and what that looks like in a second. I just want to point that out. And that's not something we spend a lot of time on, but when you look at guys that get stuck in plateaus, or you get guys that seem to hit a glass ceiling, as I coach them, the thing that shows up the most for me is I begin to notice they're not very self-aware. They don't get it, right? And here's the indicator. Here's the indicator of self-awareness. Any area of your life where you are getting an unintended result, right? And I'll say just for emphasis here, an unintended negative result, but it would apply either way. But any area of your life where you're getting a negative, unintended result is an indicator of an area of your life where you are not self-aware. Examples of, I'm always broke. I always date the same kind of person. I never seem to have enough. I always seem to lose my team when I get to X amount. After a good week, I have a bad week. All of those things, if there's patterns here, we can get into why patterns matter in a second, it is an indicator that you lack self-awareness in that area. And I'll give you some tools before we're done here on how we can become more self-aware. But for the sake of lists, I'll go through the whole list. I don't want to talk about the other things too much today, but they should be meaningful. So number one was self-awareness. Number two is being an agile learner, being able to pivot and adjust, pivot and adjust. We're in a period of time right now where our business is going to be stronger and better than ever when we come out the other side, but it will not look the same. This is forever going to change our business. And I'm very excited about that. Right? I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities that are provoked from this, but you have to be willing to pivot and adjust. One thing is certain, change is always happening. And it doesn't matter what part of your life, change is always happening. And in business, that is part of business. And the guys that get stuck, I have a little alarm in my office. We have an agreement. If anybody says, because that's the way we've always done it, somebody has to call them out. And so we've learned to just never make that statement. That isn't a valid reason to do something. So being an agile learner, being able to pivot and adjust, again, Sir Richard Branson, perfect example of that. I remember when he was getting into the airline business, now he's getting into, trying to make us a multi-planetary species and make Moon a tourist destination. So incredible. Pivot and adjust, pivot and adjust. So number two is agile learner. Number three is they're great communicators. Again, Sir Richard Branson. No surprise here, but they're great at communicating. They're good at conveying their message. Now, only if there was an atmosphere, if only there was an opportunity, if only there was a business model that really focused on teaching you how to communicate. Somebody needs to come up with that because that could be huge, I think. And then lastly, they're great influencers. Right? Their sphere of influence is growing over time, which is really a social lubrication that makes whatever they're doing much easier to do. So 4 things real quick, and we'll get into self-awareness. Number 1 is self-awareness. Number 2, agile learner. Number 3, great communicators. Number 4, they're influencers. Lasting success, traits of lasting success. So again, going back to my formula here, so what is the one thing, if we do really well, solves for the most other things? And so this year has been on self-awareness. Now that's a big thing for me anyway. It's something I've valued for a long time, but as an organization, we've been going through, how do we become more self-aware? How do we begin to understand ourselves? And so I'll take the remainder of our time together to kind of set the frame for that, and then maybe we can have some questions at the end. So 3 decisions we're making all of the time. 3 decisions we're making all of the time. First, and number 1, what to focus on. And it is a decision, it's a choice. Right? You can tell the direction somebody's going just by what they choose to focus on. And this is hard for a lot of people to swallow, but we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are. So when I talk to somebody, and it really doesn't matter what about, when I listen to what they're paying attention to, and that's immediately when I go into a one-on-one scenario, that's the first thing, it's a filter. I pay attention. What are they choosing to talk about? What are they choosing to see in their environment? And this is important to understand. We are 80%, our brains are 80% emotional. They're only 20% logical. We are emotional creatures. We are not logical creatures. So this matters for a big reason. What you begin to focus on, you begin to feel. Right? Just think about this for a second. If your conspiracy theorist friend, was able to talk you into believing that everything that's happening in this world right now is a massive conspiracy, and all these people are being arrested. I'm not making this up. I actually had somebody explain this to me. And all these people are being arrested, and this is just a big ruse, and the coronavirus isn't what it seems to be, blah, 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 blah. Okay, if you get caught up believing that, and you begin to focus on that, 2 things are going to begin to happen. 1, you're going to start seeing things in your environment that line up with that truth or that conspiracy theory. And 2, you're going to begin to feel whatever that provokes in you. Fear, concern, joy, elation. But it started with what you chose to come into agreement with and focus on. Okay? This is important. We're going to come back to this when we talk about influence here in a second. we need to understand this. What you focus on, you begin to feel. What you begin to feel, okay, you then begin to create meaning around. Well, what does this mean to me? right? And depending on your level of emotional maturity, it's very easy for most of us to mistake our emotions for truth. And this is why this is particularly important to understand. We begin to feel something, because we're feeling this, it must be true. Without really self-awareness, without emotional intelligence, it's very easy to make this mistake, and people do it every single day. That's why the news media works the way it does. It's fueling emotion to drive behavior. And I'm going to put a tab there. I'll come back to how that shows up in a second. Okay? But emotions are the spice of life, but we need to understand that they're not an indication of truth or falsehood. They're an indication of your focus. Okay? And let me give you a real world example for those I just lost. Let's say we're all together. I know in these social distancing times, it's hard to imagine, but let's say we're all together in a room, and Ed comes into the room, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and he's in fear, and he says, there's a bomb, this building's about to blow up, we all have to get out. Okay? Well, based on your hardwiring, you're going to behave in different ways. Some of you are going to be the Navy SEALs or the firemen of the group, are going to be carrying people out, helping others. You're going to be more concerned about others and making sure they get out than your own safety. Some of you are going to be climbing over other people trying to get out. You don't give a fuck about anyone. Let's just save our lives, right? All of these different dynamics are happening all at the same time. And we're all having a very real, visceral experience based on the fact that a bomb is about to blow up. So we all scramble. We all get out of the building. We get into the parking structure. We're all hunkered down, waiting for the bomb. And here comes fucking Ed, laughing his ass off. He thinks this shit is so funny, okay? And he's laughing. People are in tears. People's lives are flashing before their eyes. Some people are angry. Some people are depressed. Some people are like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was bullshit. He comes out and he goes, it was all a joke. It was all a joke. Was your experience real? Abso-fucking-lutely it was real. Was it based on a lie? Yes. This is why we need to become more self-aware, and we need to understand our emotional response. Our emotions are not an indicator of truth. They're an indicator of our experience based on our focus. What you focus on, you begin to feel. What you begin to feel, you begin to derive meaning from. And the final decision, so number one is we get to decide what we focus on. Number two, we get to decide what it means to us. And the final decision is we get to decide what we're going to do about it. Okay, we get to decide what we're going to do about it. These decisions we are making all of the time. So it's interesting. I think, a lot of us have been expecting a recession for some time. Certainly I've been talking about it for over or close to a year anyway. We're overdue for a recession. This is coming. Now, I certainly didn't call a fucking pandemic starting this thing off, but it's a perfect storm. It's a black swan event because we're in a situation where we already needed, this recession was going to happen, right? And so it got kicked off by a pretty severe event. I couldn't think of a more severe event barring World War III to get this going, although in some ways it's more controlled as a result, but that's neither here nor there. The point I want to focus on here is in 2008 when the economy went tits up, in 2001 when the economy went tits up, and in 87 when the economy went tits up, and the Depression back in the 20s when it went tits up, there were people who made millions of dollars. And a lot of big companies were born out of those time periods. Well, what's the point in this? I will guarantee you the people that came out of that stronger, faster, better, and innovated were the guys who chose what they focused on, they chose what it meant to them, and they chose what they were going to do about it. They saw the opportunity in the problem versus the problem in the opportunity. A different frame, and it's a choice. We don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are. So it's interesting when I'm talking to people here, what's their perspective on this? Well, California, I believe, was the first to go on lockdown. So we've been on quarantine. This is our third week. Kids are in being homeschooled. It's interesting. They're on Zoom. If you want to see a shit show, watch a bunch of third graders get on Zoom with their teacher. It's really entertaining. Like, man, these teachers. But we've been on this for a while, and we've been seeing this kind of unfold across the country. So I'm talking to people, how are you feeling? Well, some people are saying things like, well, I'm bored, I'm just sitting around. I'm like telling them, don't put on the quarantine 15, guys. Let's put a routine together to make sure we come out of this faster, better, stronger. And there are other people that are like, man, this is a blessing in disguise. I'm getting to recover. I'm getting to focus on myself. I'm getting to read those books that I didn't think I had a chance to. I'm getting to connect with my family. I'm being more present at home. Right? We're all getting to pause, but what this experience looks like to you is going to have a lot to do with what you're choosing to focus on in it. Okay, so this is our first choice is what to focus on. What does it mean to us? What are we going to do about it? Okay, going back to feelings and emotions and why this matters. If you want to fuck up your attitude, am I cool to cuss on this? Sorry, Ed, I don't even know what I'm doing.
Well, it's too late now. But
right,
yeah, I mean, I guess if anyone takes offense to it,
I apologize. It's not Ed's fault. It's just who I am. Yeah.
Low, baby.
Okay. So, so if you want to make sure that your attitude is messed up, you want to guarantee. Here's the formula. You want to make sure. I want to make sure I have a shitty attitude every day. I'm going to give you the formula to make sure that you have a shitty attitude every day. I'm going to explain why this matters. First thing, we're going to commit to focusing on things we absolutely cannot control. Number one, you have to do this, okay? Focus on the things that are completely out of your control. Number one, I want you to be disciplined here. I know this is hard, guys. Focus on the shit you can't control. Number two, I want you to be very committed to focusing on all the things you don't have. Focus on lack, focus on scarcity, focus on your lack of resourcefulness, your lack of resources, okay? Number two. And number three, you absolutely have to commit to focusing on only the past or only the future. You cannot stay in the present moment, okay? This is your formula to make sure you have a really fucked up view of the world and that you're negative and you feel like a victim. And if anybody just walked through this very quickly, some of the things you're going to begin to notice. If you commit to this process, you're going to feel very disempowered. If you commit to this process, you're going to start to feel like a victim. If you commit to this process, you're going to begin to feel very uncertain about what's going on. And when all of that settles, you're going to be looking for somebody else to be your answer. Right? You're looking for a bailout plan. You're looking, I can tell my guys all the time, the cavalry's not coming. You are the fucking cavalry. But if we begin to have, if this is our pattern of thought, we begin to focus on the things that we can't control. We focus on the things we don't have, and we focus on the past and the future, we're going to get really negged out, feel disempowered, and look for somebody else to be our answer. Well, why does this matter? Okay, pay attention to political leaders, whether in a religious context or a governmental context. Pay attention to the media. All of what wants your attention. Our currency in this world, in our life right now, our currency is attention. Okay, we gotta understand that where we give our attention is the currency. So pay attention to the message that you're hearing from about everywhere in those three fields. What do they want to do? They want to tell you all the things you don't have control over. They want to tell you all the things that you don't have. And they want to remind you of all the wrongs that have been done to you in the past and how that's not changing in the future. Why? Because as soon as you come into agreement with that, you're going to look to them to be your answer. And this isn't new. If you study history, this is how history works over and over and over again. It's a very predictable way to direct and lead, if you will, or manipulate human beings. Because when it produces victim, it produces fear, and people in those states are very easily manipulated. Self-awareness is the piece that allows you to step in and create a pause between stimulus and response. It's the piece that allows you to step back and go, well, is this true? Is there another perspective? Is there another way to look at this? Why does everyone believe this? Self-awareness is the ability that it doesn't matter whether millions of people historically will be on the wrong side of things if you believe what millions of people believe. But just because millions of people believe it doesn't mean it's true. Self-awareness allows you to step back, look at it, and evaluate it for its merits of truth. Okay? So this is why this is a high leverage activity for me. And this is where we start. The most important question you can ask yourself is why? Why do I believe what I believe? Why am I choosing to focus on the things that I'm focusing on? This is the key. Now, we've been talking about this for 7-8 days now, or about almost 20 hours in. So I'm giving you a high level kind of overview of the content here. But we have three forces of destiny. Let's see, what am I doing on time? I got a little bit of time here. Okay. We have three forces of destiny, three things that shape our destiny. And our destiny is shaped by our decisions. Our decisions shape our destiny. So it's important to understand, okay, if I understand, I get it. What I focus on, I begin to feel. What I begin to feel, I create meaning around. What I create meaning around, I determine what I'm going to do about it. Okay. Those are all decisions. So then it's important to understand, well, what is driving our decisions? Right? Why can you have two different people in the exact same scenario make different decisions? The classic example of this, I think it's 15, 16 years old now, but I believe it was 2020. The sun's in my eyes, let's see here. I believe it was 2020, did a report on biological twins. And it was interesting. They grew up together, and I want to say Detroit, but I might just be picking on Detroit here. But
yeah, it was Detroit.
Was it Detroit? Okay, yeah. So biological twins, they grow up, right? One of them ends up in prison. The other ends up the CEO of a major company. Okay, and so it's a perfect like petri dish, a culture of like, okay, well, let's figure out what are the determinants here. What are the decisions that led them here? Well, it's really interesting, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but when they interviewed both of them, their explanation for where they ended up was exactly the same. Like, what in the hell? One ends up multimillionaire, financially free, running a big company. The other one ends up prison, and their reasoning was the same. Obviously in inverse, but exactly the same. They asked the guy in prison, how did you end up there? He explains, well, my mom was, I'm making some of these things up, but my mom was, a drug dealer.
I know it. I know exactly what it is in Tony Robbins' book.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So they were raised by their mom. The dad was out of the picture. He was always in and out of jail. When they wrote the book, his dad was in jail for like 30 years because he robbed a grocery store and shot and killed the owner of the store.
Jesus, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and during his court case, the judge asked him, why did you shoot that man? And he said, because he got in the way. So it was a really nasty piece of work. So he was out of the picture. And so the boys got raised by a mom who was working 3 jobs. And then you can finish off the rest.
Yeah, so obviously growing up in Detroit, this conditions, that's their father's lot in life. Their mom isn't present. She's gone all of the time. They grew up in a rough neighborhood, right? Got exposed to a lot of different things. So their reasoning then here at the end, the one that ends up in jail, so what else would you expect? My dad's in jail for murdering somebody. My mom was never home. I grew up on the wrong side of the neighborhood, right? And that was his reasoning for why he ended up in prison. Okay, and most people listen to that and go, yeah, no, fuck yeah, that makes sense. I get it. Yeah, rough lot in life. Dude ends up becoming, a successful CEO. It's the same thing. What other choice did I have? I grew up on the wrong side of the neighborhood. My dad was in prison. My mom worked 3 jobs. I had no other choice. I had to succeed. Interesting.
Yeah,
same experience.
They both said, well, look at my dad. I had no other choice.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Ed. That's cool. I didn't know that was in Robin's book.
It's in Awaken the Giant Within.
Well, it's an old school one. Anyway, the point there is they got to determine how they couldn't control their outward environment, right? Number one, we got to focus on what we can control, inversely. They didn't get to focus the outside environment, but both of them had a choice to decide what they did control, which is themselves. They decided what they got to focus on, what it meant to them, and what they were going to do about it. Good, perfect example, because they grew up in the same house and they're freaking twins. 2 different outcomes. Why? Their decisions, right? Their decisions shape their destiny. So then we got to ask ourselves, well, what is the determinant of our decisions? So there's 3 forces of destiny, and I'll get into them at a high level here, and then I'll pause for questions. And hopefully this isn't, hopefully this is relevant to you guys. I can't see everybody's faces, so hopefully we're catching what I'm saying. But by the way, inversely, if you want to feel deeply empowered, I might not come back to this, so I'll just say this now. Inversely, if you want to feel deeply empowered, if you want to be able to bend or create reality, if you want to go into every situation, very present, very aware, and ability to influence, commit to these 3 things. 3 things, not 10, not 100, these 3 things. Commit to spending at least 90% of your energy focusing on the things you can control. Surrender the illusion of control of others and focus on the one thing you have a shot at controlling, and it's just a shot, and that's you. Okay, commit to that. Number two, commit to focusing on the things you do have, your resourcefulness, and stay in a position of gratitude. No matter how bad things are for you, there is a really, really, really good chance if you live in the United States that it's way worse for someone else somewhere, some other country. All right, commit to focusing on the things you do have, stay in gratitude. And then number three, commit to being in the present moment, which is the only moment that's real. Right? The past has already happened. We can't do anything about it. The future is only happening through the present moment. Stay in the present moment. You want to feel empowered, be present, be able to create your own reality. Those are your three steps. And pay attention to any message, right? This is classic marketing. If anybody knows this, it's us. Classic marketing is to try to get you to pay attention to things you can't control, try to pay attention to things you don't have, and to focus on a past moment or a future moment.
Hey, Saf,
how you wrest control.
I'm going to jump in real quick because this is great. But there's an old, Chinese proverb or whatever, but I'll explain it real quick. So people who are depressed a lot of the time, they live in the past and they truly believe their best days are behind them.
Yes.
So you probably know some people like this. They're 40 years old and they're still telling stories about how they used to be a badass baseball player in high school. Like, dude, that was 20 something years ago. Like, cool. So those people are depressed. And then people who are anxious, they're focused on the future too much.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. And in either case, you're disempowered in that position, right? There's nothing you can do about it. The only moment you can affect is the present. So those are the three things. If you want to feel deeply empowered, commit that to yourself. I'm going to live from this place. And if you do that, different opportunities will come to you. So I'm going to go through really, really quick the three forces of destiny. If you guys want more of this information, if it's interesting to you, you can check out my YouTube channel. It's just my name, or you can go to my IG. I've been dumping a lot of the interviews I've been doing there. So there's another place to get content. It's just at Sebastian Ingus. And I respond a lot there. So if anybody wants more information, you go there.
Send me all the links and I'll put it with the recording.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So number one, your driving force. Your driving force. This starts with Abraham Maslow. He was an existential psychologist, most famous for Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization, right? The needs pyramid, which we've referenced many different times over in different circles. Okay. 6 Human Needs Psychology says we have 6 basic human needs that when we're born into this world, they're built into our operating system. That psychologically, here's our 6 needs. I'm going to go through them quickly. This is a 2-hour conversation just to unpack this. So I want to whet your appetite. And if it's interesting to you, you can go do more research. Okay. Number 1, the need for certainty. Number 2, the need for uncertainty. God in all of our infinite wisdom created both. We want to be both certain and uncertain. Sounds like human beings, to be sure. Okay. Number 3, need for significance. Number 4, love and connection. Those first 4 are really about you, right? They're very you focused or me focused. Okay. And that's interesting. And you can take a test. I think it's just six human needs psychology test. Can help you figure out, just like the DISC test, figure out where you kind of lay, where your value statements are there. Okay. Those are your first 4. Most people spend a lot of lifetimes just working through those first 4. The last 2 are growth and contribution. And they're described as the needs of the spirit or more existential and have more to do with fulfillment in life, right? So it's the ability to self-actualize, to give back and to contribute. And it's easy to backtest this. If you think about the times in your life that have been most fulfilling and you've been the happiest, they fit into 3 categories. 1, they created an amazing experience, right? Shared experience with others. 2, you were growing. Happy people are growing people. We know this on a neurological level, just by the hormones that are created. And 3, you were contributing. And if you want to look at behaviors that really stick, or things that you do over and over again that really stick, they tend to combine those 3 things in some form or another. So they created an amazing experience, you were growing, and you were contributing. Really, if we're doing our business right, our business is creating that platform for people, and for this reason, understanding that psychology. But this is where all of our habits come from. So for people who are like, I don't understand why I do the things I don't want to do, or I know I shouldn't, and I have a hard time doing the things I know I should do. Well, what you want to pay attention to is what need is being met by doing the thing you say you don't want to do. And I'll give you a little hint here. The more of those needs that are being met by one activity, the more super powerful that habit becomes. So I'll give you a real world example. I don't want to pick on anybody, but you smoke cigarettes and you know this shit's going to kill me. I know it's not healthy for me, but I'm having a really hard time kicking the habit. Well, can you get certainty from smoking a cigarette? Absolutely. Can you get uncertainty from smoking a cigarette? Absolutely. Can you get significance, which is a hidden determinant here, from smoking a cigarette? Absolutely. If you started smoking young, there's a very good chance you smoked with people that were a little bit older than you, and you felt more like an adult. You felt more significant when you smoked, right? And that conditioned response from that time gets stuck, and now it goes into your subconscious, and you don't even realize you're still thinking that way. So you're like, why the fuck do I have such a hard time breaking this? There is a need that it's meeting. Can you get love and connection from smoking a cigarette? Absolutely. If you smoked in a group of people where that's how you all connected and that was what you did together, social smokers, it connects it. If all four of those are being met by one need, you're gonna have a really hard time breaking that habit until you learn how to replace those needs with other things, because there is a deep psychological need that's being met by this, okay? So this is high level overview, but I just want you guys to get the concept, and certainly you can do more research. Okay, so that's 6 human needs psychology. That's your driving force. Those are the hidden determinants that are impacting the decisions you make every day. And for anybody who's going, yeah, I relate to that. There are things I know I shouldn't do that I continue to do. And there are things I know I should do that I don't do. It's because your conscious brain has the ability to do that math. Your subconscious brain is just working off the programs. This is why self-awareness is so important. Why do I believe the things I do? Why do I do the things I do? Okay, little cheat code here. Any one of those phrases that you answer with, because that's what my culture tells me, that's what the news media tells me, that's what my family tells me, that's what my pastor tells me, that's what, fill in the blank, that's how I was raised, that's what my teacher taught me. None of those are valid reasons. It doesn't mean any one of them are wrong, but for knowledge to become your own, you have to be able to own it by understanding it for yourself, where you no longer point to somebody else and go, I'm doing that because of them. It is your knowledge. It's now integrated and we can close the identity gap. Okay, so important piece here to understand. Driving force is number 1. Number 2 is your guiding force. Your guiding force. This is also really important. So how your guiding force works, your driving force is your needs. Your guiding force determines how you get those needs met. Okay, so I'll give you an example of this. So your guiding force, if you're taking notes here, your guiding force is your personal identity, how you view yourself, your residual identity. It's your values. It's your code of ethics. It's your situational ethics. It's your cultural ethics, your cultural belief systems, or your meta programs. An example of a meta program that shows up around the world is typically Americans get pointed out no matter where they travel in the world. Like you can go, if you've traveled a lot and you're an American, you get this. You go anywhere, they go, oh, you're a fucking American. And sometimes they mean it disrespectfully, sometimes they don't. Why can they tell? It's a meta program. What is the number 1 value in the United States? Freedom and the freedom of speech. So when we travel as a group, we tend to be more obnoxious. We tend to be louder and more gregarious as a group. It shows up because it's a meta program. We're like, what the fuck? I live in freedom. Now we could discuss the merits of the truth of that, but nonetheless, that's the underlying value. So it shows up in other cultures. And so we value that above being respectful of other cultures and how they do things, and makes us show up in a big way. Very easy to point out. Okay, that's a meta program. It was inherited through your culture scape. Okay, well, why does this matter? Well, your values and your meta programs determine how you get those needs met. I'll give you an example. Somebody has a deep need for significance and a need to want to contribute. Okay, and usually you have a primary and secondary at any point in time. Okay, well, solving world hunger would definitely meet, right? If you could resolve world hunger or make us a multiplanetary species, Elon Musk, or deal with the energy crisis, whatever, that would give you significance and contribution, right? In a big way, and you're really adding to the world. But let's be real. For some people, putting a gun to somebody's head and telling him to do something also makes them feel significant. And if they're in a gang or a gang environment, they may also feel like they're contributing by doing that. So you see, it's not just your needs, it's how your values determine how those needs get met. So we got to marry those two things together. Driving force is our needs. Our guiding force, how we get those needs met, is met by our values, our meta programs, how we see our world. I realize this content is going very high level on some very deep shit, so I apologize. Hopefully this just whets the appetite a bit. And then for those deep note takers, they're like, okay, complete it. What's the third thing on that list? The third thing is your fuel of choice. What emotion do you use to drive your behavior and other people's behavior? So anybody want to guess what Ed's fuel of choice is? Pretty easy, right? It's one of my favorites.
Vodka soda?
Humor, right? Make joy, lightness, right? He likes to spin humor into things. It's a fuel of choice. Some people use anger, right? There's the other side of that. If you grew up in a military family, especially a British or US military family, anger was a big component of the military. So that came down. You likely had a parent that tried controlling behavior through anger. Understanding your fuel of choice is important. There's an old saying, I think Maslow gets credit, says, he who's good with a hammer sees everything as a nail. He who's good with a hammer sees everything as a nail. If you have an emotional place that you live, then it's going to manifest in your life. Why does this matter? Well, we know this isn't woo-woo. This is science. We now have the instruments to be able to look at the human body, and based on its energetic resonance, meaning its energetic field around it, we can determine what emotion it's existing in. Fucking crazy. So now, another way of saying this, we got cameras that can look at people and say, that dude's happy, that dude's angry. And they're using it for obvious practical application, right? Because sometimes people can hide what they're feeling on the surface. Energy doesn't lie. Okay. Emotion, energy in motion, is held in your body. So somebody who's anxious and depressed, where do they usually feel that? Stomach, abdomen. Yeah, right here. Well, interesting. If you hold that emotion, what are your typical symptoms? What do people die of that hold that emotion? Heart disease, heart failure. They usually prescribe medicine for ulcers, things like that. Why? Because you are housing energy in your body, and it's not healthy energy. Now, if I sound woo-woo, let me just give you I'll give you some places to go. If you're like, what the fuck are you even saying? That's some bullshit. I get it. Check this out. There's 3 studies that you can check out. Pick the one that you like. I believe it was in New York, the subways of New York, but it could have been London. So I'm sorry, it's a little bit vague. But they did a water study where they played classical music over water, just stay with me. And they took pictures of how the molecules of water came together. And when they played classical music, when they played country music, different versions, it was like these beautiful arrangements that kind of looked like, in my opinion, looked like snowflakes. Now, I'm not going to pick on angry white man music, but I'm going to pick on angry white man music right now. I'm a 90s guy, right? So I'm a big fan of grunge, although I don't listen to it much anymore. They took heavy metal grunge music, played it over water. I'm not making this shit up. You can go Google this for yourself. And the water molecules turned into like these gothic spires that were super sharp and just exactly what you would expect from that music. It took on what I would describe as somewhat of a demonic look, okay? This was just for music. Anybody know how much of your body is made up of water?
90%.
No, it's in the high 70s, but a fuck ton of it. So this matters, and you all immediately know what I'm saying because you feel music. That's why we love it. We feel it in our being, okay? Well, this matters because how you hold energy and your fuel of choice, how you use energy, has an impact on your body over the long haul, more than you realize. If you've ever gone and visited an old folks home, I grew up in a retirement community, so this makes a lot of sense to me. But if you go visit an old folks home, you'll notice something. When you go look at them, there are people whose standing emotion is burnt into their face. Their cellular structure literally burnt it in. So old people that have frowns, right? They're just grumpy. You can see the wrinkles of just grump, right? Pretty easy to figure out what emotion they existed in for long periods of time. The opposite is also true. You're one of those guys that they have this lightness and joy, and it shows up their wrinkles. Their wrinkles are in such a way that you just see the lightness of their joy and love. And if you hang around elderly people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Very easily, you can tell the difference between the two groups. Why? What was the prevailing emotions they allowed existing in their body? What we talked about before, focus determines feeling. Now, there are some biochemical things that could also be in part here, but that's way less than what people want to give credit to. Most of it is what we're focusing on. So I'll pause there. I know that was a lot of information and mostly a big tease. Hopefully there's some stuff you can take from it. Emoto's water experiment, the power of thoughts. Awesome, Rachel. Throw a link in there. It might be interesting for people.
You're very smart. You must have paid attention. You must have paid attention at school. I was generally throwing a ball against a wall or hitting a ball.
Sure.
So, you know, I think this is definitely a call, guys, that you might want to watch the recording and kind of reread your notes. There's a lot of good stuff here. So let's close the loop here. Why are you so motivated about our business, probably just business in general, after all this shiznit is over? Well, I forget how you teed it up, but obviously there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers.
Yeah. So what I love about our business is, for me, it meets all three needs we talked about earlier. All three fulfilling aspects of life: experience, contribution, growth. In my world, I was explaining this to Vera the other day, what I think we do very well is mobilize, equip, and train. What that looks like can change. We can pivot, right? We can make adjustments based on the environment, but we're building people. And so I get excited about this because there is going to be an immense amount of opportunity that comes out of this. So give you an example, 2008 recession, the year before that, my net worth was almost $1 million. I was like 25, 26. One of my goals was to become a millionaire in my 20s. Okay. I got my ass handed to me the next year, and I went from being a millionaire to dead broke, financially ruined. Why? Well, I made most of my money in the stock market, real estate, and it was heavily in the credit markets. Now, if you know what happened in 2008, then you know those were the three things that absolutely got wrecked. And sadly, I saw it coming. I just couldn't unwind. Like, I was like, fuck, this can't sustain itself. You know, people are getting approved using their cat's name, their dog's name for their houses. You know you're in for it. But I got my ass handed to me, and it was very, very painful, but I learned some incredible lessons. So coming out of that, I was looking for an opportunity that allowed me to grow and to scale, and I could be in community with others. It's something that tactically, it's on a skill set level, worked with me. Now, I had made a lot of money before that. And the year before, I think my income was $250,000, which isn't a ton of money, but for a 25-year-old kid, I was pretty pleased with it. And so a lot of people asked me when they saw me take a position going door to door, AT&T Uverse, 100% commission, why are you doing that? Well, there was two reasons. Frankly, one of the reasons I don't talk about a ton, I needed to, right? I needed a fucking job at the time. I needed a way to create revenue. But the other part of me was like, okay, I'm going into something that will take care of today's needs, but also has the ability to allow me to grow this into my calling, into the things I'm about. And that was important to me. I don't really care where I start. I've never really been that way, just because I have a lot of confidence in my ability to perform. But I care very much about being on a roadmap that's going to take me to where I want to be ultimately. And our business does that for me, right? And so there's going to be more people like me who are coming into the business after this. 24 million people are projected to lose their job as a result of this. A lot of those jobs aren't coming back. There will be people that can do the math for themselves, that will be overqualified for the position at hand, but will do exactly the math, that will look back and go, how did you guys do in this recession? What were you guys doing when the shit hit the fan? And go, I want to be part of that group. I want to be part of that community of people. And they'll come in and they will radically change your business overnight. And that's why I'm really excited. And I have been waiting for this since the last recession. Because this one, last one was hell for me. I had no money, right? Nobody would hire me. My Bank of America took $150,000 out of my bank account. It was all cash to cover loans that I had with them. By the way, I wasn't late on any of them. So I was liquidated overnight. I even hired an attorney to figure out whether that was possible. Found out, yeah, sure enough, which is why I don't recommend having your debt and your money held by the same institution. Because in recession times, when they're trying to cover themselves, they'll pull the money out of those accounts to cover your debt with them. So anyway, side note, but I learned that the painful way. Well, this one, I'm a lot more calm, cool, and collected because I've got a much longer runway, right? I could probably sustain for 2 years. Now, I recognize not everyone on this call is in that situation right now, but you do have an opportunity to learn from this one, because sure as shit, This will happen again in another 5 to 10 years, right? Maybe not the pandemic, hopefully not the pandemic, but the recession aspect of this is typical in a capitalist society, especially late stage capitalism. It gets more severe, okay? So we need to understand that and be prepared. So take the lessons from this and make sure you're in a position in the next one where you're not freaking out. No part of me was freaking out when all these people were losing their job, like in the economy, me personally. Now, I was very concerned about my people, making sure my people are taken care of, but I wasn't sweating it the way I was in the last one. It's coming from a different place, and I'm far more concerned about other people. I would be lying if I told you I was very concerned about other people in 2008. I was very much concerned about myself and my family. So being able to contribute now puts me in a position where I can jump on calls, hopefully add value, encourage others. Let's get our minds right. Let's come out of this with fucking jet fuel and crush. So don't put on the quarantine 15. Make sure you're under Ed's tutelage and leadership here. So I know you guys are going to be in good shape, but make sure you're making the best of this time so we can all hit the ground running and take the fuck over when this thing is done.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, again, clearly we think on a different level. I'm actually wondering where a ball is right now. I might go chase after it for a couple of minutes. But, you know, I just think about when I used to bartend. I was never going to do that forever, but it's kind of a hard gig to quit because it was easy. I was waking up at noon. I was playing golf. I would come back to the apartment, take a shower, throw on my t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops, head to Jelly Rolls, the dueling piano bar, and make a couple of $100. And it was always a case of, you know, I know I've got to get a real job. I don't want to be a 50-year-old bartender, but I'll worry about that next week. It's a very hard job to quit because it's a pretty easy gig. But I think there's going to be a lot of, you know, some of my favorite people, the bartenders, the waiters, the waitresses, who have killer people skills. They can multitask like crazy. They can, you know, it lines up well for what we do, who right now are thinking to themselves, this might be the time I go look into a career. And, you know, if the stats are correct, you know, they're talking about, for sure, 50% of restaurants will be permanently closed after this. Could be as high as 75. So Sabs, we here in the Cunliffe household, we've already started talking about opening a restaurant down the road.
I love it.
People are going to still want to go out to eat. So anyway, we got basically 2 minutes. What do you want to leave us with? So this has been great.
Yeah, just to piggyback of what you're saying there, Warren Buffett said, when everyone's getting in, get out. When everybody's getting out, get in. And the average restaurant has 17 days of cash flow, meaning if they're shut down more than 17 days, they're fucked. The average small business, 32 days of cash flow. Interestingly, the highest in that group is real estate agents. They have 47 days of cash flow before they're fucked. But we're going to see a lot of people under this time crunch that's going to cause a lot of pain. There'll be a lot of opportunity. And I agree with hospitality. I came out of, my first job was in the restaurant, and I ended before I was going to college. I was a server and a bartender, and I loved it because I made a ton of cash, and it really helped me hone my people skills. It's a great place to learn people skills. And then they come in hungry. The problem with the restaurant business or even traditional retail is even when people enjoy it, there's no real opportunity there. And those are the two areas that are getting hammered right now, hammered. And so there's going to be a ton of great people who come in with skill sets. Like, wait, like, listen, you're all summer babies. You grew up in the best economy that the world has literally ever seen for most of you, right? And you know what tough recruiting looks like. I mean, it's been a tough sled, depending on what city you're in and what you've been dealing with. Orange County, our unemployment has been below 2%. My guys are about to experience what it's like to have just you get to pick the best of the people, right? You're going to end up saying no more than not. I remember my recruiter, when I started and the economy was really bad, my recruiter would cry. She's still with me, Sandra. She's not my recruiter anymore, but she's still with me. She'd cry with all the people we said no, because she's like, they all need jobs. I'm like, yeah, but not with me. Like, they're not all going to make it. So anyway, it's an exciting time, but we want to make sure that we come out of this prepared to take advantage of it. I'm sure Ed's covered this, but make sure you have strong routines. So we don't know how long this is exactly going to be, but if we have great routines right now and we're living by a calendar, even if we're at home, it's going to change. You'll be more prepared when we come out of this. I love seeing all the people in suits. To me, that's part of our routine, which is why I'm still wearing at least the top half of my suit. I might be in my boxers, you never know. But I'm at least wearing the top half of my suit because it keeps me in that routine. So I know you guys got another call. I appreciate everybody's time today. Hopefully there was some value out there. Again, you can find me on Instagram or YouTube if you want to dive into this further. Just Google some of the things we're talking about. There's lots of information on it. But I appreciate your guys' time.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, guys. Have an awesome day. See you here at 10:30 tomorrow if you want to do the disc training. Who's